How many do we have watching? Great, we have a minion. Nice to see everyone. Hope you had a nice week. It's nice to have some wonderful mornings again and having it cool down a tiny bit. If you're joining us from home, I'm going to go turn these lights on so that you will be able to see me better. Is that it? You got it? Okay, thank you. Maybe you don't want to see me better, I don't know. But you can see Jackie, so that's good. Let's begin our morning service on page 192 or 74 with Matovo. Oh, I have to turn this off mute. Okay. Hello. Had a little. Oh, there we have it. Apropos our parshan, let there be light. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Vani berov chastecha avo beitecha eshtachaveh elecha kodshecha biratecha. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov, ohalecha Yaakov, mishkenotecha Yisrael. Let's go to page 198, Birkot Nisim B'chol Yom, thanking God for the miracles of the morning. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan l'sachvi bina lavchin ben yom uvein laila, who has given the mind the ability to distinguish day from night. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam pokeach ivrim, who opens the eyes of the blind. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam matir asurim, who frees the captive. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam zokef kefufim, who lifts up the fallen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam roka haaretz al hamayim, who stretches the earth over the waters. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamechim mitzadei gaver, who strengthens our steps. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam malbish harumim, who clothes the naked. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hanotein layaf koach, who gives strength to the weary. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hama'avir sheina me'enai numa me'afapai, who removes sleep from the eyes, slumber from the eyelids. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam b'shasani b'tselem Elohim, who made me in the image of God. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani ben chorin, who has made me free. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shasani Yisrael, who has made me a Jew. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Ozer Yisrael b'gvura, who girds Israel with strength. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Oter Yisrael b'tifara, who crowns Israel with splendor. And let's continue now. We'll move over to Chetzi Kaddish, page 224 or 106. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, be'amad yivrach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala, Uvisman karivimru, amen. Yehi shmei Rabba mevorach, le'olam le'omei omaya, yitbarach, v'ishtabach, v'par v'traman v'itnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shmei dekutsha brichu, le'olam min kol berchata v'shirata, Tush bechata v'nechemata damiran be'ama v'imru. Amen. Please stand for Baruch Hu 226 or 108. Ya la ya la la ya la 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 ya la la ya la ya la la ya la 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 la. Hamevorach, Baruch Adonai, Hamevorach, Leolam, Leolam Vaed. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due, now and forever. Ya la 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 la, ya la ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la, ya la ya la la, ya la 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 la, ya la ya la la, ya la la la, ya la la. Ya la 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 la. Yotzer or Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, Yotzer or vorech choshech, oseh shalom. Hameir la'aretz v'la'arim aleha barachamim, uftivo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reishit, ma'rabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, ma'a ha'aretz kinyanecha, tiparach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, ve'al me'orei or she'asita yifa'arucha selah, or chadash al tzion ta'ir, V'nizkei chulanu mehera la'oro. Baruch atah Adonai yotzer hameorot. Ava rabba haftanu Adonai Eloheinu, Chemla gdola v'yetera chamalta aleinu. Avinu malkeinu ba'avur avotenu v'imotenu שבטחו בך, שבטחו בך, אבינו מלכנו. ותלמדם חוקי חיים, כן תכוננו תלמדנו. אבינו האב הרחמן, המרחם רחם עלינו. ותן בליבנו להבין ולהשכיל לשמוע, ללמוד וללמד, לסור ולעשות, ולקיים את כל דברי תלמוד תורתך באהבה, והאר עינינו בתורתך, ודבק ליבנו במצוותיך, ויחד לבבינו לאהבה ויראה את שמך, ולא נבוש ולא ניכשל, ולא ניכשל לעולם ועד, כי בשם קודשך הגדול והנורא בטחנו, נגילה ונשמחה, נגילה ונשמחה בישועתך. ברוך אתה אדוני הבוחר בעמו ישראל באהבה. שמע ישראל אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. 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 ברוך שם כבוד מלכותו לעולם ועד. Let's all be seated and continue on 234 or 116 with V'ahavta. V'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך. והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אדוני אלוהיכם אמת. Let's all turn to page 241 or 123, and let's read together on the top. The good in us will win over all the wickedness, over all the wrongs we have done. We will look back at the pages of written history and be amazed, and then we will laugh and sing, and the good that is in us, children in their cradles, will have won. Our hearts beat with certainty that there is a day and an hour and a mountain called Zion, and that all of the sufferings will gather there and become song. ringing out into every corner of the earth from end to end, and the nations will hear it, and like the caravans in the desert, will all to that morning throng. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam. Ay day day day, yabba ba ba bim bam. Ay day day day, yabba ba ba bim bam. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. Mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh, nora tehilot osef eleh, nora tehilot osef eleh, shira chadasha shibchu geulim, leshimcha leshimcha al sfatayam. Yachad kulam hodu v'himlechu ve'amru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam. Yam bam bam bim bim bam, yabba ba ba bim bam. Ay ay day day day, yabba ba ba bim bam. Ay day day day, yabba ba ba bim bam. Tzur Yisrael, kuma be'ezrat Yisrael, uvdechenu mecha Yehuda ve'Yisrael. O aleinu Adonai tzvaot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai, Ga'al Yisrael. We've now reached the Amidah, page 242 or 124, and let's all stand together. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Adonai sefatai tiftach, Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Ya la 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 la, 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 ya la 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu v'Imotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, Vezocher Chasdei Avot ve'imahot, Umevigula livnei bneihem, Le'man Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer Moshiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Bezrat Sarah, Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechayeh kol atah Rav le'Hoshia, Mashiv haruach u'morid hagashem, Mechakel chaim bechesed, Mechayeh kol berachamim rabim, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בגבורות, ומי דומה לך, מלך ממית ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. 248 or 130. מקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאך, וקרא זה אל זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוך כל הארץ, כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני, אדוננו מדיר, שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקומו. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו, הוא מלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ברחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, ימלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהיך ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש, ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני האל הקדוש. Please be seated. We'll continue on 250 or 132. ישמחו במלכותך שומרי שבת וקוראי עונג, עם קדשי שביעי כולם יספרו ויתענגו מטובך, והשיבי רצית בו וקידשתו, חמדת ימים אותו קראת, זכר למעשה בראשית. Together on 252 or 134, let's read. Our God and God of our ancestors, be pleased with our rest, sanctify us with your mitzvot, and grant us a share in your Torah. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation. Purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Adonai our God, grant us your holy Shabbat as a heritage. May Israel, who sanctifies your name, rest on Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, who sanctifies Shabbat. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. And let's continue together on the top of 255 or 137. Ever-present one, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayers, wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in this land, in Zion restored, in all lands. You are God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otzcha levadecha b'yirah na'avod. Sim Shalom, 258 or 150. Let's sing through our masks. Sim Shalom, Tova uvracha, chen b'chesed, rachamim berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, barcheinu yotzreinu kulanu ke'echad, be'or panecha nata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen b'chesed rachamim berachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Torat chayim ve'ahavat chesed, ve'ahavat chesed, utzedakah uvracha v'rachamim ve'chayim ve'shalom, sim shalom, tova uvracha, chen b'chesed v'rachamim ve'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, ve'tov be'einecha levarech et amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך, שים שלום, טובה וברכה, חן וחסד ורחמים עלינו, ועל כל ישראל עמך. ברוך אתה אדוני המברך את עמו ישראל בשלום. Praise to you, Adonai, who blesses your people, Israel, with peace. And of course, we add our prayers for peace, not only for Israel, but for the United States of America and its allies, and the rest of the world as well. Let's take a few moments for silent prayers on this beautiful Parshat Breshit Shabbat, or Shabbat Breshit, depending on how you want to say it. And think about anything you want, and unwind from the week that has passed, and have some time for your own meditation and thoughts. Oseh shalom bimromav, uyaseh shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru amen. Yaseh shalom, shalom aleinu ve'al kol Torah service time, Breshit. Now, just a warning, the next few weeks are very difficult for me, very, very difficult. Cantor, who is in Calistoga performing a wedding, poor guy, performing a wedding, but he had to go to Calistoga for the entire weekend, of course, which I don't blame him and Sarah. They have two littles. They should go to Calistoga anytime they can. But the fact that he's doing a wedding is awesome. He's a lefty. For next, 2 months, you want to be a lefty when lifting the Torah, because everything is on the left side. The scroll is, let's say, heavy left. When it gets a little bit toward Exodus, it's a little bit easier. So this morning, you're going to see a wobbly Torah lifting, because I'm a righty, and I haven't been using for Torah lifting in a while. So just heads up, if you see the Torah fall, it's not going to fall. Kanahara. We all have to fast for 40 days. It's the whole thing. But maybe fasting for 40 days after all the high holy day food I ate is not such a bad idea. Because it's brisket heavy, Jackie. Am I right? Yes. Why not pay $120 for a slab of meat? I mean, come on. And then if you get the kosher one, it's like twice that much. All right, enough of my banter. Anyone who wants to grab a Torah commentary, please feel free to do so if you're at home. Kind of easy to locate. This week's Parsha, we'll be looking and reading at Genesis 1, chapter 1, verse 1, at the beginning and in the beginning, as it turns out. All right, Seder Kriyat Torah 362 or 244. Ein kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai ve'ein kema'asecha malchutecha malchut kol olamim u'memshaltecha bechol dor v'dor Adonai melech Adonai malach Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed Adonai oz le'amo yitain Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom Av harachamim heitiv avirtzoncha et Zion Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Tivnei chomot Yerushalayim Ki vecha levad batachnu Melech Elam v'nisa Adon olamim. If you're not already standing at home, please stand. Ki mitzion teitzei Torah Ki mitzion teitzei Torah U'devar Adonai Mirushalayim Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah Le'amo Yisrael B'kedushato Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Echad Eloheinu Gadol Adonenu Kadosh Shemo Gadol Adonai Iti Uneromema Shemo Yachdav. Please blow kisses to the Torah. Ha Adonai Hagedula V'Hagevura V'Hatiferet Netzach Ve'ahod Ki Chol B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Ki Chol B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Lecha Adonai HaMamlacha Ve'amid Na'aseh Lechol Erosh. ready to go. Breshit. Please be seated. So I thought I was going to read from the beginning. Usually I read something else, but I thought maybe today we would just play it safe so it wouldn't have to look for it. So Breshit is the story of the creation of the world. As those of us who have studied Torah over many years know, there is sort of an alternative story of the creation that starts in the beginning of chapter 2 of Genesis. And what I mean by that is we have a theory that there were two different authors. Many people have heard about or know about what we call the documentary hypothesis, that Torah was actually written over a period of probably close to 1,000 years by different authors, different individuals or people. Some believe that Torah was given at Sinai. It was perfect. God gave it to Moses. Moses wrote it down. But nonetheless, if you contrast these two, you would learn the following, and you can see on page 19 what I'm saying if you want to follow along. The first one that we're normal, the one that we're most used to, that's normal to us, is Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim v'et haaretz. That in the beginning, or from the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. And then there's this comment, and it was tohu vavohu, that the universe, the world, the earth, as it stands as a symbol of the universe, was chaotic, void, just this vast mass of nothingness. And then God forms it with this order, day 1, day 2, and so on and so forth. But if we go in our Tanakhs to chapter 2 of Genesis, and we look at verse 4, it says something quite different. Ele todot hashamayim ba'aretz. And we know this phrase, Ele todot, these are the generations, because it's the name of a Torah portion later on, toldot. And it's a very common phrase that's used in Genesis. These are the generations of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob, of Esau, whoever. The Torah giving us a little editorial commentary within the text about who begot who came from whose mom, dad, so on and so forth. So this in chapter 2, verse 4, which is on page 22, this is the chronicle of heaven, or this is the toldot of heaven and earth when they were created. On the day God eternal made earth and heaven, no shrub in the field was yet on the earth, no plant on the field had yet sprung up, so on and so forth. And so when the documentary hypothesis goes into effect here, or what makes it applicable here is God is referred to, and you saw it in the translation, it says God eternal. In the Hebrew, that's Adonai, Yud He Vav He, and Elohim. In the beginning, Breshit bara Elohim. It's just Elohim. Here, it's Adonai Elohim. So that tips us off that maybe there was a different author or a different text that was fused together. I don't think any of that matters. I actually am a traditionalist in the sense that I think the beginning, Breshit bara Elohim story fits with this story, the Ele Toldot story, that this is really the Torah's own commentary, and almost as if, like at the beginning of a television show, it says, last week on LA Law, I don't know why LA Law came to mind from 30 years ago, but, when they say on last week's episode, and I think that that's what this is. It's a commentary within the Torah saying, this is what we just learned of. We just learned that God established or took the heaven and earth. They were created, and no shrub in the field was yet on earth, no plant, and God goes and creates all of these things. Again, I don't think it really matters, but it has been disputed by scholars and academics for a long time. What I do love about the second story of creation is Adam going around giving names to all the animals. I think that's kind of fun. And he's taking very seriously his Garden of Eden job description, which is to name all of the animals. But the idea here is very interesting about how humanity was created. If you look on page 23, after it tells us a river, verse 10 of chapter 2, a river went forth from Eden to the water of the garden. From there, it's divided, became 4 branches. If we look at the Fertile Crescent, ancient Mesopotamia, this sort of makes sense geographically. The first was named the Pishon. That one flows around the land, and Havilah, and so on and so forth. And then it says, the eternal, verse 15, took the man, Ha-Adam, the man, placing him in the Garden of Eden to work it and keep it. God, eternal, then commanded the man, saying, you can eat any of the trees that you want, but the tree of all knowledge you may not eat. For the moment that you eat, you will be doomed to die. Now, why does God say you will be doomed to die if you eat from it, but after Adam eats from it, he does not, in fact, die? The rabbis say it's not meant that he's going to physically die, but he's going to then live in a living death. In other words, living outside the Garden of Eden, everything is provided for you. Everything, you've got beautiful rivers flowing. You've got all the fruit, all the food that you could want. You've been given dominion over it. You will die in terms of you will suffer. And this is the opposite of what we talked about last night, which is the idea that life is good. God says everything in creation is good, right? God looks at all of creation and says it's very good. But here, the message to Adam is if you eat of the tree of knowledge of good and evil, that is to say, if you get to really understand all of the mysteries both of creation and of the world itself, you're going to die, you're going to live a living death. You're going to have to go and work, and we know later on the punishments are they get banished from the garden. Eve is told that all women from now on will have pain during childbirth, and Adam is told all men from now on will sweat and work hard in order to produce. So there are so many mixed messages in that in and of itself, but in the whole story of creation, some of which we talked about this morning, but on this Shabbat I leave you with this thought. Why create the world? Why create all of this, the light, the sun, the moon, the stars, the mountains, the streams, the plants, the animals, and then create humanity, and then banish humanity from the very essence of that creation, and then 10 generations from now, as a little spoiler alert for next week, flood it and destroy it? Like, what was God thinking? What was God thinking? To create this beautiful place? As someone said last night, insert Adam and Eve, who kind of messed the whole thing up, and within 10 generations, attempt to destroy, scrub the hard drive, to use modern parlance. Why would God do that? And that's a question I'm not going to answer for you. It's a question I want you to answer for you, or at least to think about and contemplate. Why create and put all of this work, maybe even with 2 different versions of how the creation story took place, only to have that tohu vavohu sense, that sense of chaos, come back and then have to destroy it a week from now, 10 generations from Adam and Eve. So that's the thought for the day. Good luck with that. All right, I will bless the Torah on behalf of the congregation in honor of all of you for making not only your 6th service this week, but it feels like we've had a lot of services, but also for being here for Shabbat Breshit, and of course for you at home. Baruch hu et Adonai hamvorach, Baruch Adonai hamvorach le'olam va'ed, Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol ha'amim, v'natan lanu et torato, Baruch ata Adonai noten ha'torah. Breshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et ha'aretz, va'aretz hayita tohu vavohu. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the land was chaotic and void. V'choshech al panei tehom v'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim. And the darkness was covering everything, but the ruach of God, the spirit, the breath of God, went over and across against the water. Vayomer Elohim yehi or. God said, let there be light, v'yehi or. And it was. there was light. Vayar Elohim et ha'or ki tov. God looked at that light and said, this is good. Vayavdel Elohim ben ha'or uven ha'choshech. Then God made a separation, havdalah, if you will, between the light and the darkness. Vayikra Elohim la'or yom. God called the light day, ulachoshech kara laila, and the darkness God called night. Vayehi erev, vayehi voker, yom echad. There was erev, there was lila. There was erev, there was evening, and there was boker, morning, and that was the first day. Notice that the sun and the moon aren't mentioned until day 3, but nonetheless, God does a separation, a lot of separating between elements, here light and dark, and that is the first day. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. We'll take one moment now to ask for God's blessings and prayers of healing for all of our loved ones who are in need of our prayers. Anyone who would like to mention out loud the name of a loved one, or at home, if you'd like to type in the name of a loved one in the description below on Facebook or on YouTube, I will give you a heads up in just a moment when to do that. Mishaberach Avatenu Avraham Yitzchak v'Yaakov v'Matenu Saraf Garach v'Leah Hu Yivarech et HaCholim. Please now, if you wish to say a name out loud or type in a name of a loved one you'd like us to pray for healing, please do so. May the Holy One who blessed our ancestors, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah, bless and heal those who are ill, the names that we have said aloud, and those who are in our hearts and in our thoughts. HaKadosh Baruch Hu yimalei rachamim alehem, lachlimam, l'rafotam, l'achziakam, vayishlach lahem mehera refuah shlema min hashamayim, refuah tenefesh, refuah taguf, hashta b'galav izman kariv v'nomar, amen. May the blessed Holy One be filled with compassion, for their health to be restored, for their strength to be revived. May God swiftly send all of them a complete renewal of body and spirit. Let us say, amen. All right, the moment you've been waiting for, let's stand and get ready to lift the Torah before we redress it. And think of the cantor, Mr. Lefty, who's not here. Vezot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai be'ad Moshe. Erinenu betoratecha bedabeg lebeinu b'mitzvotecha ve'yachei levavenu le'ahava u'yira et shemecha ve'lo nevosh lo nikach ve'lo nikasher le'olam va'ed. Please be seated. Well, we didn't drop the Torah, so that's a good sign. Sometimes now I start to think about what's going to happen. I mean, I'm going to be 53 in February, but I think, like, what's going to happen in, like, 10 years when I start to have even more aches and pains? I'll have to get some young kid up here to lift the Torah. Although my shul growing up, there was a 90-year-old guy. His name was probably, like, Abe or something. I don't remember his name. But he was a Cohen, and he lifted the Torah at 90. So there's that. Haftorah portion for this Shabbat, for Breshit, if you're following along in the home edition, that is to say the Plaut commentary, you can find it on page 51? 51? Yay, 51. We'll be reading from Isaiah chapter 42, verse 5. And we'll be saying the blessings and then reading mostly in English, just to see what the connection is between the Haftorah and the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divrehem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah u'Moshe avdo u'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei amet v'tzedek. So here are Isaiah's words. He's living in Babylonia, 6th century before the Common Era. Thus says the eternal God, the one who created the heavens and stretched them out. Sounds good? Who made the earth and all that grows in it, who gives breath to its people and spirit to all who walk on it. I, the Eternal, have called you to righteousness and taken you by the hand. I am the one who created you and made you a covenant people, a light to the nations, to open the eyes that are blind, to bring the captive out of confinement, those who sit in darkness out of the dungeon. I am the Eternal, that is my name. I will not share my glory with another, my praise with idols. My earlier promises have come to pass, and now I tell you some of the new things before they appear. I tell you of them. Here's a little vision into the future. Sing a new song to the Eternal. Sing God's praise. Shir el Adonai, Shir Chadash. These are words that we probably know. I'm sure Debbie Freeman, of blessed memory, wrote many songs, as have other song leaders and singer-songwriters. Shir el Adonai, Shir Chadash. Sing a new song. Remember, Isaiah, God are speaking to the people who are in the Babylonian exile. Let the seas roar and all it contains, your coastlands and all who live there. Let the wilderness and its towns rejoice, the villages of Kedar and their settlements. Let those who live in Selah sing out a shout from the mountaintops. Let them give honor to the Eternal and praise God at the coastlands. The Eternal goes out like a warrior, like a soldier in fury, ready for battle, shouting and roaring to prevail over the foe. And it keeps going with beautiful imagery and messages of God's forcefulness and assertiveness in sort of leading the people out of their plight in Babylonian exile. And if you go all the way to the end of the Haftarah portion, you can see it says in verse 10 of chapter 43 of Isaiah, "You are my witnesses, says the Eternal, my servant who I have chosen. You know me, therefore, and put your trust in me. Understand that I am the one. Before me no God was formed, and after me none shall be." God is both sufficient and necessary, as Aristotle and Maimonides say, to God's self. Be sure that I am the eternal God, and I alone can deliver you. So to answer the question about why did God create the world only to want to destroy it the following week, why does God put up with our shenanigans time and time and time again? Well, Isaiah teaches us a very critical and fundamental message of Judaism. God does it because we have been called to righteousness, in our covenant at least. We have been called to righteousness. We were created to be a covenant people and to be an or lagoyim, a light to the nations. 2, specifically, verse 7, open eyes that are blind. Bring the captive out of confinement, those who sit in darkness out of the dungeon. That's why God did it. God never loses faith in humanity. God never loses. And there's a little moment next week where Noah is saved and his family are saved, but not so good. But what God expects from us vis-a-vis the covenant is for us to be God's partners. God says something, I think, incredibly powerful here, and again, fundamental to Judaism. God wants us to be partners in providing godliness in this world. Compassion, grace, kindness, to lift the eyes of the blind and the captive out of confinement. All of these images, we're supposed to take those who are the lowest and raise them. And most of all, and I do believe this, to be a light to the nations, to be exemplars of justice and compassion, all of those things. That's our job. And that's why God sort of hangs in there, even though the beginning is a little rocky. Adam and Eve get kicked out of the garden. Cain kills Abel. 10 generations pass, and God is like, the world is filled with Hamas, with violence, but yet God never loses faith. So the covenant, which isn't formed yet in the Torah, becomes exceptionally important. And our role in that covenant is to be partners with God in the world's ongoing creation. And I think that's what Isaiah is ultimately saying. So one answer to the question, why did God do this? Only to destroy it next week? Well, there was a bigger picture in mind, and that was this idea of Or LaGoyim, that God would have a light to the nations, and that would be the Jewish people. So you can add that to your conversation, if you choose. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, tzur kol amim, tzadik b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'mdaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, על התורה ועל העבודה ועל הנביאים ביום השבת הזה שנתת לנו אדוני אלוהינו לקדושה ולמנוחה לכבוד ולתפארת על הכל אדוני אלוהינו אנחנו מודים לך ומברכים אותך יתברך שמך בפי כל חי תמיד לעולם ועד Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Whether you are here or at home, please stand 374 or 256 as we return the Torah to the Aron HaKodesh. Hallelujah et Shem Adonai ki nisgav shemo levado. Hodo al eretz v'shamayim vayaren keren le'amo tehila lechol chasidav Livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Eitz chaim hi lemachazikim ba betomcheha meushar beracheha darkei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom hashivenu Adonai elecha v'nashuva chadesh chadesh yameinu chadesh yameinu kekedem. Aleinu 586 or 282. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol latet gedula leotzeh breshit shelo asanu k'goyei aratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem וגורלנו ככל המונם, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומושב עיקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובהי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, כך כתוב בתורתו, וידעת יום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום hu bayom hu yeh Adonai echad ushemo echad. On this Shabbat, we remember with love those of our congregational family whose yahrzeits occur this week. Ethel Abel, Eleanor Abelson, Mitchell D. Behrens, Fred Bickart, Sarah Blitt, Sam Branker, Barry Carrier, Charles Cohen, Beverly Davidson, Louis Droz, Rochelle El Gazar, Sydney Erline, Sally Fishbein, Eli Friedman, Samuel Gaffin, Eva Judith Gold, Norman J. Goldberg, Gladys Goldstein, Louis J. Goldstein, Sarah May Goldstein, Kenyon Harris, William Katanik, Bernice Klupt, Jerome Kramer, Oscar Kronfeld, Marjorie Lazarus, Esther Liebson, Edward Leonard, Catherine R. Levin, Burton Lukowitz, Celia Lubin, Kay Mendel, Sidney Mishkin, Ardella Polk, Leon Redner, Flora Ryder, Edward Ross, Stanley Arthur Shannon, Rose Schlossberg, Ann Schwartz, Mary Siegel, Jack Seidberg, Harold Scher, Barbara Ruth Shelley, Minnie Sherman, Irving Smith, Stephanie Sussman, Ida Turkin, Esther Vogelman, Joseph Weiss, Ruth Whiff, Carol Zimpbaum. If anyone would like to say out loud the name of a loved one you would like us to take into our hearts with our own, or if you'd like to type in the name of a loved one online, please do so at this time. Zichroneim levracha, may all of their memories be a blessing, lador vador, and for many generations to come. Mourners Kaddish, 598 or 294. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, be'amad ivrach irutei, v'amlich machutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon, v'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'izman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei shemei rabbah mevorach, le'alam le'amei amaya. Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yipa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekucha brichu. Le'ilah min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechemata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. V'seh shalom b'marmav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace send peace to all who mourn and comfort to those who are grieving. Together we say amen. Before Kiddush and Hamotzi, please be seated. We can finish up with the best end of Shabbat song ever, Ein Kelohinu, which can be found on 660...
26.
Whatever. 626. I was in the ballpark. 626 or 322. Ein Kelohenu, Ein Kadonenu, Ein Kemalkenu, Ein Kemoshienu, Mi Elohenu, Mi Chadonenu, Mi Chemalkenu, Mi Chemoshienu, Nodel Eloheinu, Nodel Adonenu, Nodel Malkeinu, Nodel Moshienu, Baruch Eloheinu, Baruch Adonenu, Baruch Malkeinu, Baruch Moshienu, Atahu Eloheinu, Atahu Adonenu, Atahu Malkeinu, Atahu Moshienu. If you have a Kiddush cup at home, you're doing a little day drinking. V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, לעשות את השבת, לדורותם ברית עולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, ביני ובין בני ישראל, אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, בורא פרי הגפן. לחיים. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם, המוציא לחם מן הארץ. אמן. שבת שלום.